Hey, this is Pat Shand, writer of Robin Hood, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You've just jumped inside the pull bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic reading crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, IDW, Boom Studios, Zenescope, and more, we have everything you want to read right here. Transformers comics? Yeah, we cover that. He-Man? Yeah, sure. DC superheroes like Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Batman Beyond? Yep, we have those too. How about TMNT from IDW and I Hate Fairyland from Image Comics? Yeah, we have all that here. Plus, so much more. It's all inside the pull bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So without any further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we are reading right now here inside the pull bag.
Hello and welcome to The Pull Bag. This is episode 327 and I am of course TFG1 Mike. We were going to be doing a Batwoman teaser kind of thing in this episode, but Nicole, aka Beatles Diva, her schedule is way too hectic right now. So we're actually going to postpone the Batwoman episode until December, right before the CW crossover. A sad replacement for her is JT from Saskatoon. Hello, sir.
Gee, I'm not insulted at all by that introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm back.
You're back. I don't even remember. The last episode you were on was the Zenescope 10th anniversary episode. And I had said in that we were going to be doing... Yep. I said in that we were going to be doing more new Zenescope stuff. We're going to start with Grimm Fairy Tales Code Red from Zenescope Entertainment. It is written, the story is done by Joe Bruscia, Pat Shand, and Ralph Tedesco, written by Pat Shand, who I've interviewed him like 2 or 3 times now. Art is done by Anthony Spey. The trade design for the trade paperback was done by Christopher Cody. And the editor on the book is Nicole Glade. What were you, because I had read this before, because I had read this like in the middle of reading Pat's original Robin Hood run. What were you thinking, like your first impressions once you started reading this?
I definitely have to revise my opinion of like 90% of everything I've ever said about the Zenescope books. Like, because for years I'm one of those ignorant fanboys who, I didn't want to read them, therefore I just talked insane amounts of trash. I recant that now. Some of these books, the stuff I've read, both in research and specifically this miniseries we're going to discuss tonight, is a lot better than I ever gave it credit for. But having not read like a lot of Zenescope, I appreciate the recap blurb that they have in the first page of these comics. I mean, that helps for a guy like a noob like me get a good idea of what the universe is like, terms, concepts, like, how they have the 4 different realms. You have the concept of highborns and false bloods, or like, half-breeds. And, it's not like there are superhuman or supervillains and superheroes. They're just highborn. Some are good, some are evil. It's definitely a lot of interesting concept. And I mean, the fact that they're basically made a superhero universe out of fairy tales is pretty cool. And, there's a lot of people working on this stuff that have their heart and soul put into this because they believe in it.
Yeah, like I said, I don't remember, like, I've been talking about Robin Hood for years at this point now, 2 or 3 years or more. I think 2014, 2015 is when I started that, and I think when I first interviewed Pat was like I interviewed him in 2015 and 2017. Yeah, the crazy thing is, I don't even remember how I came upon Robin Hood, and I just started reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is something new, this is something different, this is something interesting. And after we had finished there is more Robin Hood stuff that we can do in the future, but I wanted to go back to some of the other characters that I had met along the way while reading Robin Hood. And Brittany Waters, a.k.a. Red Riding Hood, a.k.a. Agent Red, it was one of the ones that I wanted to read because I just felt, after reading the 10th anniversary issue, I'm like, oh, I absolutely love this. I love the way she's written. I love the way her character is. It's very, very interesting, and it's a departure, because let's face it, most comic websites, insert www, insert comic website name here, .com, .whatever, Or like, oh, the newest Marvel and DC, and that's all well, good, and great. I love Marvel, I love DC. I don't read all the stuff right now, but like, you know, I read some stuff. I keep up on a lot of the news and that kind of thing, and you know, poor DC. Batman Damn #1 will never be reprinted because they decided to show a certain body part on them. Anyway, so this was something different, new, and I absolutely enjoyed it. I've kind of kept up with it and things like that, and I think it's a fun little universe that tells you a completely different story and gives you a whole new outlook on what fairy tales are.
Yeah. I mean, any concept, if approached in the right way or with the right creative drive, you know, you can make interesting. I mean, they've turned Red Riding Hood into a superhero secret agent, and you know, Robin with a Y, Hood. Mm-hmm. You know, she's like this vigilante type government agent. There's a lot of, like, the Snow White's like the keeper of stories and is essentially the Doctor Strange of this universe. That's a bit of a stretch, but I think it kind of works. And
I would almost say Van Helsing is the Doctor Strange of the universe.
Yeah, but Van Helsing isn't like with the magic and the dimensional portals and.
But she has that nice hat, though.
I have no way to respond to that.
Oh my God! You need to get better quips. For the Spider-Man fan that I know that you are, your quips are way out of practice.
Well, it's. Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Anyway, you know, as we get into this first issue, you look on the multiple covers, which seeing comics with like so many multiple covers nowadays really takes me back to like the speculator boom of the 90s, where with the metal ink, like reflective hologram covers, and like Jesus, people, let it rest. I'd say my favorite covers would be cover A, which was done by Talent Caldwell. He's a guy, I've been a huge fan of his for years. Retailer Incentive cover by J. Scott Campbell. I can never not like his stuff. But I think my absolute favorite for the salaciousness, the cheesecake of it all, is the Jersey Comic Con exclusive cover.
Absolutely. It's the Vegas, baby.
I'm a guy, and I know what I like. I don't apologize for it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually gonna be the podcast art was the Vegas cover. I'm like, hello, how can I not make that the art? Or how can I not have Steve Megatron make that be the art?
You're like, please, Steve, please,
yes,
please,
exactly.
Please. Okay. I mean, I saw that cover and I was like, hello, Brittany.
Yep.
So
exactly. So we start the first issue off with these orc-looking guys trying to steal this red ruby gem type of thing. And there's all that going on. They don't actually get to steal it. Well, actually, that was before that. And then these people are trying to test it to figure out what it does, and so far all they know is it's just a red gem.
Yeah, I do like the fact that clearly we missed the fight, because it's like this smoldering, blazing rubble outside the Great Wall of China, and you know, this dark elf-looking dude, you know, the Dark One shall be proud, and then these government types, and I'm assuming this is the Americans and not the Chinese special forces.
I believe it's the it's HibCorp, which
Hibocor?
is Hibocor. So
yeah, it's like, I hate it when people touch my stuff, and then, you know, and lays this dude out, and yeah, then we go to the lab, and I think that's my first problem with this, is they don't establish, you know, we're left to assume that this is all the same group, you know?
Right.
But yeah, so they mentioned Robin Hood might be coming in, and they're talking about Agent Red.
Yep.
And then it's just
Agent Red, all natural.
Hey, you know what? She's singing Journey in the shower. I have absolutely no problem with that.
Oh, me either.
And well, she is a very robust-looking woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like that the art, like, it's all cheesecakey in that, but it's not like 90s image Mike Diodato Jr. sort of every woman is impossibly well built and stacked like a AAA model. This is her character, and she doesn't look like completely outrageous. I like how the artist has drawn her. You know, she's a woman and she looks like this, and that's cool. It's not exaggerated at all. And then I forgot from when we did the 10th anniversary special, she's got Cleese the Wolf. I mean, that would be an awesome pet to have, this big-ass black wolf.
Yep. And she even points it out. I have a new job. I have a new life. I have a wolf. I have a wolf. That just deserves being repeated, doesn't it?
Yeah. I would lose like a half hour every morning petting the pet wolf.
Yep.
You know, giving him treats and all that. But yeah, she gets suited up for the day, gets her Starbucks. I love the little back and forth with the two baristas, and you know, the guy is drooling over while the chick is just like, she's a slut. You know, what do you think she's wearing under that coat? Not a thing, you wish. And it's little things like this in comics that I love.
What I love in the coffee shop is she's reading something on her phone. Highborn proof, Realm Knights seen defending Greece. The comments on it, the guy that is subtle as a brick, that has to be you. Blonde chick in the red, future wife. And then, you know, you're like, but that ass. I'm like, oh, God, that is so JT.
That is, if anything, that is one Mike the Birdman dog.
No, that's you. Mike's married. You're not married. To my knowledge, you're not.
I prefer gingers.
Oh, God. Well, I'm sure she can dye her hair at some point.
One can only hope.
Yeah.
I do like the mention as she's checking, you know, Twitter or Facebook or
whatever
YouTube.
It is.
But from the look, it looks like a combination of all three, and how people know about highborns and false bloods and all the creeps that are in the world, but it's like the old, like some of the older elements of like Shield comics and Marvel, how they conspiracy theories do most of their work for them, and they like blinding people to the truth. Also, it kind of looks like she's fighting a demonic version of Megatron.
No, Mumra. Well, no, that's because of the eyes. But yeah, probably either or. Yeah, there you go. And it is probably YouTube, seeing as how it has the subscribe and the like button and the up or down like, and it has the flat. Yeah, it's more YouTube than anything else.
Yeah,
because usually Twitter people are not, you know, anonymous people with just weird white faces on their picture. Most Twitter people put an actual profile picture up, unless they're a robot. Most of the time.
Yeah. I like how she has to like go in through like this, I don't know, like office building, and just goes up to the roof just to get her ride to work. And I mean, it's kind of it seems like an unnecessarily complicated path to work, but I guess it's to prevent people from following them and all that.
That's true. Yeah. It seems like it's a little strange, but yeah. I don't know. So she goes into this secure location kind of a thing, and this is where they have the red gem, and she can tell them what it is, and it's the Cyclops' eye. It used to belong to Baba Yaga, whoever that is. Again, this is built on something that has come before, kind of a thing, I guess. You know, some of the references that are done in here, so, and, you know, at least with next week's episode when we talk about Red Agent, that'll be a whole new thing, fairly to the point of we can just go in kind of, not necessarily cold, but, you know.
We'll have more of an understanding of the world.
Yeah.
By that time. I do like it as this, just going to flip back here, get this Agent Ficaro's taking her into the lab. You know, they've come to this new training facility, and it's lightly staffed. And you know, she's like, "What is this, Hibocore Light?" and because there's not a lot of guards, and they go into the lab where this scientist is checking the gem, and he's like, "You're just the sexiest bauble I've ever seen." And there's this Dr. Sobers. What did I tell you about calling me that? It makes me feel like a pediatric. And he's like, "Well, nice to meet you, Derek." And he's like, "Duh." I just love the way they drew it. He's just like, "Dad, think of something cool to say."
Yep.
But they go over the place, and I love that when Ficarro is telling Agent Red about, this is what we're doing. We're hoping to add more Realm Knight teams. We think you can help with that. And she's like, "And? Excuse me? This is Hibicor. There's always an and."
Yep.
And then we go and he says, "Yeah, there was the Battle of the Great Wall of China," which I'd have to do some research to find out for sure if we actually see that battle in like a previous Zenescope comic, but that just kind of sounds like that would be a fun comic to read, is the Battle of the Great Wall.
Absolutely, yeah. So she goes and she figures, they want her to do some training, and she basically says, "Okay, first things first. Let me know if there's a human in that robot or not." And oh no, it's fine. We've got a million other prototypes just like it. Go ahead and go nuts. First of all, love the full body shot of her with the gun and the sword. Second of all, she's fighting War Machine or Iron Man 2.0 or whatever, because I swear to God, that looks like something Tony would make.
That looks like RoboCop 2014 without the human parts.
That's true.
But yeah, and I agree with you. I love that full figure shot, although I like the one just on top of that where she's doing the over-the-shoulder look. That's a pose I appreciate. But, she suits up, she draws her sword, looking a little like the bride in Kill Bill. And she goes to town on this, and I love the two guys at the bottom of that page where you see that full shot of the robot. Reminds me, if you've ever seen the movie Cabin in the Woods, the Joss Whedon kind of deconstruction of horror tropes. It's one of Chris Hemsworth's first films, but it came out after Thor. But there are these two lab techs in there that were like taking bets on, which horror creature is going to be released first and that sort of thing. Just these two guys. And, art being what it is, it's not that it isn't sharp. Like, it's not like loose or messy or anything. It's not like traditional, like, say, Spider-Man or Avengers where there's that hard line. There's a little more it's more like art than comic art, with the colors and all that.
Yeah, it is more defined. The background, you can see the screens and everything else and what Red is kind of doing, but the foreground with the characters, especially with the guy on the right, I mean, you see every single line in his shoulders with the suit. Like, you see the lapel creases, you see the shadow under where his shirt collar is kind of folded over, kind of a thing, and the same thing with his face. It's a very hard edge, whereas the other guy, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just here.
And I do like that background where she's jumping over the robot right before she like bisects it. I like the speed lines, and it indicates motion. It indicates the robots. It's like out of an anime sort of thing. Like you get this incredible sense of motion, which it helps tell a story more than the words do.
Yeah,
because it's more just their internal dialogue. The words aren't describing the actions. The art is telling a story as much as the dialogue. Although I do like the Wall-E thing.
Yeah, that was funny.
She pulls out this gun, which is essentially, like, it looks like a souped-up handgun, but I just want to call it the Auto 9, like RoboCop. She took Murphy out with his own weapon.
Or the Lawgiver.
That, too. And then we see her going through, like, more basically Batman-esque sort of trading scenarios, hanging from a gymnast pole, from batting away arrows with her sword. And then we see, what is basically the big bad watching her from a distance. And then he mind whammies the two poor schlubs working the gate, and they take each other out.
And all hell breaks loose because somebody's breaking in.
I like it's like, don't need this.
Nope.
it's just weird when you see it. It goes one at a time. Each guy is like possessed to take out like a key thing. That's a pretty cool power to have, like using mind control like that.
Yep.
Just like one at a time, strategically, sort of thing. And Zoe, the lab assistant, basically protects Dr. Sobers until she gets mind whammied. And he's like, oh, her brain is squishy. So who wants to know the lockdown code? And just the look on her face reminds me of like a Deadite from the Evil Dead movies. Like she's just been turned in one of the evil ones.
Yep.
And we go back to Brittany, who apparently was just left on her own outside in the training area.
Pretty much.
I like how she says, I think they're lulling me to a false sense of security.
Exactly.
Make me think it's over, and then whammy.
Yep. Where's Todd Newton when you really need him?
Yeah. But then she gets a comment or a
Call.
message over her earpiece, and he's like, we've taken control of the comm device remotely. You need to get into the facility now. The alarms have been cut up. The team is unresponsive. There's been an attack. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, you need to protect the Cyclops Eye at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And they did mention this guy Shang before, and Shang is, as I said, Snow White is like the keeper of tales in this universe, and Shang is essentially her Wong, the manservant.
Yep.
He's a powerful sorcerer in his own right, but he's there to help her out at, I forget what the, Sanctum Sanctorum is called in this universe.
I forget. I'm not even sure I remember that yet, but yeah.
So yeah, Britt, she's like, don't let them take the Cyclops Eye. We cannot let it fall into the wrong hands. And she heads in, and she does that thing where, the hero's like, keep it together, Brittany. You can't afford to lose it right now. Mm-hmm. And I like that. My favorite thing in this first issue is this inner monologue of Brittany. How it's not like your standard, oh, woe is me, I have to get home and, take care of this before something else happens in like a DC or a Marvel comic. It's refreshing to see something that's differently paced. It's not necessarily part of the story. While it is part of the story, it's just, it's not, you don't get this in a Marvel comic.
No, you don't. And that's why everyone should be reading these, because the internal monologues, for the most part, drive the story. Yes, there is discussion and dialogue between characters and all of that, but for the most part, the internal monologues really do drive the story home.
Yeah. And, I mean, we're missing some pieces here, like, the possessed Zoe is letting the big bad into the safe room where Dr. Sobers is stashed the ruby, and you see Brittany walking down this hall, and again, I know that using the art to tell the story, mm-hmm. but, did she kick all those guys' asses? Were they just lying there?
I'm pretty sure she kicked all their asses.
Yeah. So, they pop Dr. Sobers out, and this thing called Parasite that's possessing everybody possesses Dr. Sobers. And it's just... The art, like I said, the art is good and it tells the story, but it's almost unbalanced, and the art is telling more of the story than the dialogue. So mm-hmm. the progression of events is a little hard to figure out what happens from scene to scene.
Yeah. And by the time we get to issue 2, it shows you the entire fight of her kicking everybody's ass.
Yeah.
Which is very, very cool.
Yeah.
Because they're fighting over the gem. I love the page where she has to avoid all the bullets. That's hilarious. I think that's super cool. It's a great art piece right there.
Oh, yeah. Like, after she kind of wolfs out.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, I know she's supposed to be, like, a werewolf or part lycanthrope, but she doesn't look like a wolf so much as she looks like, Tigra's cousin.
Yeah.
Like, she looks more like a werecat than anything else. Although, right before she does the whole bullet time, thing where she, like, gouges out the big bad's eyes. I was like, ooh, damn. That's kind of hardcore.
Yeah.
And then she takes the ruby and she bolts. Gets the hell out of there.
She doesn't really fully wolf out in this. Like, in the entire story, I don't think she does. I mean, there are plenty of times where, as we've seen in this issue, where she's almost lost control. But I think that's the point of this story, is that she's trying her best not to lose control. Like you said earlier, when she was saying, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, even though she's letting the monster out a little bit, she's not letting it out all of the way, which is a good thing, I think, because it gives us more character depth to her than anything else.
Yeah, and it goes back to something she was talking about in the first part of the story where, she's going up to the helicopter, she's talking, she had to change who she was, so she made that choice to change, and this is all still new to her, but she likes that, she's had this training, she has more control over her wear form, and then we see parasites following her in some dude's body. Kind of skipped over the big bad troll vampire looking dude is called Borlock, who she kind of gouged his eyes out, and it's Dr. Sobers, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And she takes him out and straps him up into a tree. I'll come back for you later, and goes after. There's more of these dark elves. Looks like she slices one of these dark elves in half, and it's like what Wesley Snipes did to Ron Perlman in Blade 2.
Yep.
It's right up the middle.
And her backup finally arrives, and we see a green arrow through one of the orc's eyes, and she's like, oh, come on, you're my backup?
What's that?
Yeah.
Oliver Queen is here?
Yeah, Robin Loxley to the rescue. Somebody called TMZ. Can we skip ahead to the part where you teach me that Vulcan death grip thing you just did? 'Cause whoa. So.
Yeah, and I have read very few Robin Hood comics, but I really like Robin Hood as a character in these things. And she's fun, she's a little more she's very much in the line of, in the vein of classic 80s Hawkeye from West Coast Avengers, where she knows what she's capable of, and she's sassy and all that, and it's just a lot of fun. She isn't again, Marvel or DC characters, if they're not Wonder Woman or Batgirl, they're almost non-characters sometimes. Not, and I don't mean that in every DC character, but she has personality. She has some charisma. Versus a lot of DC characters, it's either they're all about the story or they're all about the story.
Yeah, I mean, Robin is really, really cool, and we'll get more on her later. If you specifically want to learn more about it without reading it, go back to listen to all the shows I've done on it. Because I've covered Robin from when Pat first was writing her in the original 3-trade series that they did, and then they had the ongoing, and then they have other things past the ongoing, which Pat had left the company by that point.
Yeah.
But there are other Robin things we'll be doing later. But yeah, no, it was hilarious seeing Robin pop up in this.
Yeah, and I do like the whole back and forth she has with Red. It's nice duds, very Michael Jackson Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I didn't know you were full timing with Hebicor and Robins. Never been the government stiff type, but hey, at least the checks don't bounce.
Exactly.
And then they get on, so what's the deal here? It's a code red, and I was like, she said the title. It's like watching a bad action movie in the 80s and the main character being called a loose cannon by the lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so and I like that let's go grindhouse on these bastards, and I'm just like, I like you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just the next couple of pages is just full-on badass action scene, 2 ladies kicking. Scarlett Johansson wishes she could kick ass like this.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, ScarJo, please don't hate me.
She doesn't even know you.
It's called sarcasm, Mike.
That's not sarcasm, that's just stupidity.
Okay, they do have the one badass moment where Borlock catches Robin's blade in his hand.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, this guy is not to be trifled with. And I love the look in Robin's eyes. That's never happened before.
Right.
She's literally like, "Brrr."
Uh-oh. Yep.
Yeah. And I like that it's just it's a badass villain line where Borlock knocks her down. He's over with this wicked looking knife. It's like, I had hoped to battle with you for hours until we both sweat blood. Such a letdown. I mean, it's a really creepy but badass villain line.
It is.
And then the Hibble Corps commandos pop in, and Robin decks him, and they start running. And there's that cool kind of zombie shot where one of the commandos headshots one of the dark elves or orcs or trolls or whatever the hell these things are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like, it's not a graphic image, but that's straight out of an 80s horror movie.
Yeah.
And then Borlock, this is not done. Ah! And our time will come. Okay. He didn't laugh maniacally. And then Dr. Sobers, who I just kind of want to call Dr. Drunk, but he won't. He falls out of the tree. And I don't know if he just fell out of the tree or if Robin went up there and cut him down. He just like face plants in the ground. You know, they go back to the headquarters and they're patching everything up. And they have that very telling line. It's like, Brittany, at least it's my understanding from what I've read of the Zenescope, or the Xenoverse, that Brittany is, all said and done, she's still fairly new to this sort of thing, versus Robin, who's clearly been in the suck for quite a while. Because...
Yeah.
Where Brittany says, this isn't the first time I've seen this kind of thing, and Robin responds with, yeah, but it doesn't get any easier.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like that whole world-weary warrior thing. And,
oh, yeah.
And then it's like, how are you feeling? You look better than the last time I say, sorry, that's the therapist in me. Which, again, how many comic book heroines have a legitimate, you know, something that isn't, you're not a cop or a techie or a martial artist. Like, before she was all of this, Brittany was a therapist. So she's already got that caregiver in her before she ever became, like, a badass superhero.
Yep. Yeah, it's very interesting, and it makes her an interesting character, and it makes you want to follow along and find out more about her.
Yeah. And then they get this guy, Agent Akiwowo, come in, and Robin's teasing him, saying, you know, I'd marry him just so I could be Robin Akiwowo. And he's like, are you going to keep telling everyone that?
Yes,
until I get tired of it? Yeah. Again, goes to the whole, like, flirty, sassy attitude.
Well, and that's how Robin is. That's how Robin at least was. You know, so, I mean, things have changed over the time since this had originally happened in the universe timeline. But yeah, that's essentially how Robin is. She'll go for the joke when the joke's there.
Yeah.
So Brittany has to go down and talk to the prisoner dude that's possessed by God knows what. Well,
Parasite, he was Borlock called them.
Yeah.
Which, again, characters like this are, it's not a rarity. I know Marvel has a character called Cannibal that was in I think it's the 4th volume of the Black Panther comic back in like 2004 when Ramita Jr. and Reggie Hudlin were writing it. So this sort of thing, this unseen presence that just goes from body to body, you know, like a puppet master. And yeah, so Agent Wisnowski, who's apparently the head guy in charge of this whole thing, you know, gives Brittany like, hey, buck up, soldier. You did a great job considering, you know, because no one expected this to happen. And yeah, she goes down to question Parasite about why these Dark Horde grunts were after the Eye and why they're geared up with like actual tactical equipment and Kevlar and body armor and all that.
Yeah. And he basically says, you think you know the plan? You can't imagine what's coming. It's the end, baby. Wait until you see what we got in store for you.
Yeah, and then we see a
Ivory.
punk rock werewolf.
Yeah, this is Ivory. She's actually a were-panther.
Again, not the first time I've heard that in relation to a comic book character before. I do remember from, I think it was the Cinderella one-shot that we discussed in the last time I was here.
Yeah, she was in that.
I know. I look at her, and if this was a movie, she would be played by, oh God, what's her name? Red Sonja from the 80s was Drago's wife in Rocky IV, was married to Flavor Flav for a while.
Bridget Nielsen?
That's it.
Now, see, I wouldn't have said Rocky IV. I would have said Beverly Hills Cop 2, the 6-foot blonde that grows on trees.
This is true.
So, issue 3 of 5. Love the covers. I love them all. They're so cool.
Yeah. I think looking at these ones, I like the cover C by Martin Abel. You know, it's kind of cartoony looking, you know, Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. I think my favorite would be cover A by Jamal Engel. It's a comic artist. I've been reading his stuff since like the late 90s. He's actually a friend of mine on Facebook, and I do talk with him on posts, on both our posts now and again. He's a really cool dude. I just like that first cover, like his cover, because it's just a nice solid piece of art, and seems like it fits more with the story than any of the other alternate covers we have.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, the cover B actually fits very well because it's basically a panel from this issue, I believe. I think that's what happened in this issue at some point. I love the Amazing Arizona Comic-Con cover. I think that's cool, having Robin and Red. And anytime Robin and Red are in covers together, I love that.
Oh, yeah. Also, I was going to say the artist on the previous issue, which I'm just looking up here, was Ricardo Osnaya, with help from Vincenzo Riccardi and Joel Ojeda. Not a big fan of the art on that, like the second chapter there. Looking at the art so far in this one from Joel Ojeda in the first few, bit better, you know.
It's a little different. I kind of like the art from the first 2 issues more, but I didn't really, because again, when I first read this, even the first time I read this before we even did this, like way back when I originally got it, I just read that the art was all done by the one artist I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, but obviously Anthony didn't do all of it. It's all different artists on each of the issues, but I assumed that it was the one artist throughout the whole thing. Obviously, you can clearly tell that it's not because of the differing styles from each issue to issue. But I like it. I think it's cool. I think these guys draw monsters very well, and the design on the Ivory character here, I like more than I did in the last issue. But Red, I don't know. I like the more glossy look that she had in the last issue than I do here.
Well, that's fair. You know, I do like how, you know, the monologue, and you know, she's basically like, I can't forget what's happened here. You know, like she's basically calling an audible, and she's going AWOL. And I do like that where she steals the helicopter. Is like, I was unprepared before, but with a helicopter full of heavy artillery, I know 2 things. 1, a group of orcs, no matter how big their leader is, doesn't stand a chance against me. And 2, I'm gonna get into trouble for this. Yeah, she's a loose cannon.
Yep, she is.
And then we go to Borlock, and this witchy stripper vampire zombie looking chick is like talking smack to Borlock, and she's like, "Oh, you better pull through on your end, or she's gonna kill you." And then Ivory walks in and basically says, "Yeah, get me the Cyclops eye, or I'm taking yours."
Yep.
And then we see Brittany going full on Chuck Norris with like a silenced and scoped assault rifle and 2 swords now, because apparently she's a big fan of Leonardo.
Hey, there you go. And, then she gets basically trounced by this giant ogre. Oh, hey, look, it's Shrek. Where's Donkey when you really need him?
Donkey! I do like when she's creeping up on this Dark Horde stronghold, she makes mention of the town that she's headed to there's a mine under the town, like a coal mine, and, was caught on fire, and it's just been burning under the street for decades. And that just reminds me of some story elements from, like, the Silent Hill movie. I don't know if that's actually in the game, because I've never actually played the games. But that's just, like, a cool kind of setup to be in this town, which is... the ground might cave in under you and explode into flames, or the whole place might burst into flames at any second. It adds an extra element of danger and urgency to what she's doing.
Exactly, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, but then, Purple Shrek, purple one-eyed Nick Fury Shrek, comes and starts smacking her around, and she's dodging the blows and kind of uses him the way you use Bane in some levels of the Batman Arkham games to run roughshod over the goons.
Yep. Sadly, throughout this battle, she at one point after she defeats the guy, she's like, all right, who's next? And didn't go so well for her because she's in a torture chamber kind of thing, and Ivory has captured her.
Yeah, because, you see with the fight with Purple Shrek here, like, she's taken some serious Hulk-level hits, and she's getting up, and she's fighting the monster back as much as she's trying to fight this monster in front of her, and she, basically whittles him down, kneecaps him, left the sword stuck in his chest, so when he falls down, he, impales himself, and, then she wakes up in the torture chamber, but, she's like, who's next? And then she just drops. Is that the trauma catching up to her? Did somebody crack her from behind again?
Yeah, I think somebody whammied her.
Yeah, like the art tells the story, but it's only telling like half the story, so, or not as much as it could. And then wakes up and Brittany's in her face, and
Ivory's in Brittany's face. You mean?
That's what I meant. Thank you.
Yes. So there's this whole back and forth with them, which is really, really nice because we kind of get sort of character development for Ivory, but not much. We get some backstory until she basically breaks the light bulb, and we hear all kinds of screams and whatever else, and Brittany really has gone, not necessarily full wolf, but she's gotten out of her kind of cage there, and she's beating the hell out of Ivory.
Well, I do like the whole back and forth dialogue, how, Brittany is like trying to ask questions. She's like, no, I give the Q's, you give the A's.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the whole thread is like, oh, you're going to die. You'll go quickly if you're nice to me. I'm going to eat you bit by bit if you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like the pose where she sees that with like, the silhouette and with the shadow and the light. And that's an honestly creepy scene. And she's like, you're a werewolf too. Were-panther. I know it sounds like something out of True Blood, but...
Yeah. And
the something with the writing here, I love how Brittany is clearly, mentally unstable. She's going back and forth like an actually psychotic villain should, I feel, is from nice to threatening to nice to, I'm going to rip your goddamn face off.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Brittany tries the whole therapist thing. Why are you doing this? She gives her a tip on how to. It seems like you're stuck halfway between the change. Like, ground yourself. And she's trying to, help her out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ivory, crushes the light bulb. They get into it, and that pisses Brittany off enough that she, goes full bore and starts. Like, loses complete control of the wolf, and the wolf starts tearing Ivory apart.
Yep.
And then she get outside, and I like the artist here because we go between the two artists here where we get this really creepy but kind of saucy looking shot of like where Brittany, and then when she finally gets outside and you see like the rest of Hibikor and Wisnowski have shown up, and now she kind of looks like what if Pamela Anderson dressed up as a sexy werewolf for Halloween.
She looks better than that, but yeah.
Yeah. And then Borlaug takes her down in one shot. And you hear the agent down! Agent down!
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's how the third issue ends. Fourth issue, Pat Shand on writing again, obviously. Vincenzo Riccardi is the main artist here, with colors by Roland Pills? Pilks?
Roland, I think it's Pilks.
Pilks. Okay, there you go. Jim Campbell's on letters, and Nicole Glade is on editing. Those covers, wow.
Yeah, because we got like the main cover that I got for this issue looks like the zombie, like the pale witch characters talking to Borlaug the previous issue, but the way the artist draws her here, who it's Andrea Errico, you know, it's good art, but she looks like she's half barbed wire again, that nod to Pam Anderson, and half Elvira.
Yep.
Just the way they get it. That's what I get looking at. I'd say my favorite cover is the Ali or LA Garza cover B, where it's Brittany versus Ivory. Garza's always had this slightly animated sort of tone to their art, because I don't know if it's a dude or a girl. I think it's a guy. But her art is always had this slightly animated, you know, feel to it. The main cover, like cover A by Harvey Talabau, it's good. It's got this 80s movie poster album cover kind of look to it, and that one's pretty good too.
Yeah, I like the Zenescope exclusive cover, limited to 500 copies, where it's basically just a cartoon-looking rat, like a really, really done-up animated Red Riding Hood kind of a thing. I think that with the
kind
moon
of a
behind
super,
it,
like a chibi or super deformed. Yeah, no, that one's really good too. I mean, they're all like all the covers that we talk about, folks. Like, we're not knocking any of them. It's just, you know, we have our favorites.
Yeah, exactly. So this one obviously picks up right where the last issue left off, with Agent Down, and we have Hibikor and the monster guy fighting, and they're trying to escape, and
Borlaug, yeah, like Wisnowski's calling a retreat, and Borlaug, she is mine, and he's like running towards with like this big knife, and he leaps up on the helicopter, and well, that guy might as well have been wearing a red shirt underneath his armor, because he dead.
He's so dead.
You know, and they go back to a even more secure location again in upstate New York, and just from that aerial view, it almost looks like they're in Area 51 by way of Metroplex, because like that whole building, it just looks like one big robotic looking SOB. And Brittany is talking to her inner wolf while she's under the knife. And apparently that was Cleese. Like, she thinks she's talking to Cleese in the dream, and I don't know, the way it looks when she's talking to Cleese, it's kind of like that scene in Jurassic Park 3 where Alan has the dream on the plane and the raptor's talking to him.
God.
But yeah, she wakes up and Wisnowski's there, and he's kind of, well, he's there to like lay down the law, but he's still like trying to not totally like destroy, like crush her, I guess.
Yeah, he's there for her, but he also realizes that there are rules in place, and she keeps seeing Cleese say, "Oh, there's something wrong. There's something bad. What's going on? What's going on?" And for some odd reason, she empties Cleese's gun, or not Cleese. She empties the agent dude's gun, and there's these trackers. The bullets are actually trackers or something or other.
She grabs his weapon, like Wisnowski's gun, and crushes the weapon, and you see like these like glyphs and symbols that puff out of the smoke, and they're like, oh shit, trackers. Yep. Yeah, and then he calls for a full evac, and seriously, how good is the security? Like, these people in the span of less than a day have now been invaded twice. I mean, at least in the Marvel movies, S.H.I.E.L.D. went like a couple of years between shit going south. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Well, Hibocor isn't really S.H.I.E.L.D., so...
well, in terms of, semi-secret government organization.
Yep. So the monsters with Ivory all come and attack, and because they found the location of where this place is, we have this big giant fight.
Guns versus magic, blades versus body armor, and then Purple Shrek's cousin with the missing eye on the right side. It's all like, oh, shit's going on. And yet the creepiest thing thus far in this issue is when they cut to see Parasite in his magic cell, and he's all around the mulberry bush, and that is a creepy individual.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, you see this double-page spread of Ivory and Borlock, bringing down. You got like this one guy's got shades on his battle helmet. He's carrying an assault rifle, and there's one with like a purple toque on, which I was just like, why?
Yeah, I don't know why.
It's like, it's cold out. It's cold. And apparently Brittany really wrecked up Ivory, because you see that one shot where she hops onto, like, grabs a hold of one of these flying hobgoblin looking things, and you see like all the Frankenstein style scars on her arm. Like, clearly she got her shit wrecked.
Yep. Absolutely.
Brittany does that awesome pose where she's, we missed the gearing up montage, but she's loaded for bear now with, guns and blades and her sword. Oh my.
Yep. And she goes on to fight Chip, or the guy that Chip is inhabiting, kind of a thing, and she has an actual Mission Impossible moment here.
Yeah,
hiding in the ceiling.
Also like Wisnowski, where Wisnowski, and it's like something out of the whole Orion's Belt Men in Black 1, how this, the Cyclops Eye basically contains like another universe. And apparently the whole reason the Horde, for the Horde. Okay, sorry, wrong universe. The Horde wants this because they basically want to like, draw out all the inhabitants of this universe and use them as their army.
Yeah, they're going to be part of the Dark Horde, yep.
Yeah, and then Wisnowski kind of has his last stand as the bad guys come through, and Parasite comes after Brittany, and she's got like the whole Tom Cruise and the ceiling over top, which, why does nobody ever look up? Like, how many action movies have we both seen where the good or the bad guys get the drop on their opposite number by, jumping up and doing the spread eagle and holding themselves up there for like those 3 seconds? Although by the look of it, looks like Brittany is actually squeezed metal in her hands, Hulk style. So,
yep.
Like, watch your mouth, Chip. Down.
Yep. Yeah, this
and
penultimate.
Yeah.
Chip's face. She just beats it to death. Yeah, the way this one ends is basically, I'm not a victim. No, I'm, she says all this stuff, and the monster dude is like, my meal, give me the Cyclops Eye, and we'll make your death quick. And that's how that one ends. I love the first 4 of this. I think they're great. I think the story is well done. Pat's doing an amazing job here. The art, even though it does change, I still like it all at this point. For the most part, there are a few bits and pieces here and there that I'm not a fan of, but other than that, I really do dig it. We get into issue 5, and as always, we have the multiple covers from Zenescope. My favorite is probably the third one, cover C. Love that.
By Mike Crum. Yeah, that's... I'd say that's my favorite too. Cover D is a close second. You got the Wizard Wool cover, which, you know, they're going for the sexy cover there, and it's not bad. It's not tasteless. It does nothing for me. Talon Caldwell does the second cover, but that's the one I like the least, because he's drawn like this cyber werewolf or something, cyber demon, and it's just it's not very well designed. I'm just kind of like, no, dude, no, you're trying too hard. The cover A is really good with the the zombie witch, you know, whatever her deal is. But yeah, Mike Crum's cover is the best. It's kind of reminiscent of I think it's called She, SHI. It was one of the many bad girl hero comics that came out in the 90s. But it's a good pose. Joel Ojeda, or I'm sorry, dude, I'm mispronouncing your name so badly. He's doing the art in this issue. And it opens with Borlock like, "Don't try a thing, girl. You're as alone as ever." And it's just like, why do the villains always insist on twisting the knife like that? Because you know you're going to get your shit wrecked.
Yep. Very much so. So we go through this, and it's the whole villain hero thing, and Ivory shows up. Well, Ivory's there the whole time, but basically, Borlock says to Ivory, you know, "No, I'm gonna kill her. I'm gonna do this," and he's like, "You're just Looney Tunes," and that just sets Ivory off, and she ends up killing him. So now it's Ivory in the army versus Red.
Well, yeah, because I like the whole thing where he's like, "I'm gonna kill you," and Ivory's like, "No, she's my kill," and he like, even for a bad guy, that's a pretty vicious backhand, and he's like, "You know, I would as soon kill you as snap your neck. This is my victory. We have no time for your lunacy." And that's a pretty hardcore way, because, folks, she doesn't just kill Borlock. She grabs his own knife and buries it in his skull. And then she's just sitting there with this, like, crazy smile. "He called me crazy. Okay there, Harley Werewolf. We get it. You're nuts." And then she goes in and, you know, starts beating on Brittany again, and
she goes all full monster.
Well, like, yeah, because Brittany has that control, but then Ivory loses it, and dear God, that is the least sexy werewolf I have ever seen in comic books.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't even know what to say about how crazy this is.
Well, I mean, she grows to like 12 feet tall, and you know, she basically has like an American Werewolf in London style change here. And then, you know, Brittany roars, and they get to scrapping, and Ivory's like, "Show me who you really are," and they're fighting, and it's like this back and forth until the Cyclops eye goes skittering, and this Horde member grabs it and like dashes off, and you can almost hear this with the smile on his face.
Yep.
And then we finally get what the dream was telling us, well, at least what was implied through the dream, because Ivory's choking Brittany out, and then Cleese has shown up with his pack.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, it's gonna get good. And all the orcs are like, shit. Especially that one where you see him with a gun in his hand, and he's just like eyes wide, and he's just like, "Oh, I've made so many mistakes in my life." But what do you think of that one shot where Brittany, she like kind of, I guess, demorphs, for lack of a better term, and grabs her sword and strikes like, you know, badass hero pose?
Oh, I love that. I love it every time she does the badass hero pose.
You know, and definitely seen something like that in Kill Bill. And she slices up a couple of orcs, and Cleese is like gnawing on this one guy, and Ivory's been clotted pretty good, and she basically GTFOs.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I just absolutely love this. Like I said before, I love Pat's writing. I love the art. The art in the final issue is great. There are a lot of moments besides just the hero pose moments for Brittany that I love. I basically love how this ends, where basically Cleese and his pack come in, save the day kind of a thing, and then Brittany ends up going back to the hospital and talking to the guy, and like I wasn't sure, like I had originally read this a few years ago, like I said, but I wasn't sure, like I hadn't remembered like how this was gonna end. I remembered almost everything else. I'm like, how are they gonna end this? Oh right, they're gonna go to the Dark Queen. That's right. Which is interesting that they do that, setting up the next whatever it's gonna be.
It's called a teaser.
Yeah.
But I do like, you're right. I do like how it ends where Brittany goes to the hospital to check on Dr. Sobers, and he asks her, now that I don't have that thing that I don't want rattling around my head, it's just like the thing in your head that doesn't belong, does it ever stop whispering? She just gives him that slightly sad smile, and she goes home and, pets, petting Cleese, and you get like that of a shot of the like base. I don't know. Did they have a team name for all the heroes, or are they just
all the main heroes like Red and Robin Hood and Snow White and all? They're called the Realm Knights.
Okay.
That's the one thing I do know. I have not actually read any of that yet, so I eventually want to. So
yeah, and I like that last shot where she's like getting ready for coming out of the shower, and it's a classic like from horror comics and horror movie trope, folks, where the good guy, bad guy, they're human. When you look in the mirror and you see like their monster form, I think that's a really cool image, something to use. And then we go to, I guess this is Queen Alicia or whatever, this pale witch chick, and she's like, well, I'll let you live for now, Ivory. You almost spoiled the entire mission. And she's like, do I get a reward? And you see her, she's like clawing, like she had this scar on her arm before, and it just looks like a basic, like just person. And now she's like scarring it up, looking more like Brittany. Okay, the witch isn't the queen. I missed that when I read this the first time. And
the witch isn't the queen. The queen's different.
Yeah, and she's like, my queen, an offering. When will we release the army? All in good time. The end. Now, I love that all in good time. That is a great way to end any sort of kind of horror-esque story. It's like an old school horror movie where they go the end and then the end morphs into question mark, or the end credit scene or the final scene of the Blob remake from the 80s where this scarred up preacher has got this fire and brimstone tent out in the sticks, and he's actually got like a small piece of the Blob that wasn't taken away at the end. The Lord will give me a sign, and you see it, and I love that is like the best way they could have ended this story, because it's only the beginning. They're preparing for war. The Hibbocor versus the Horde. I was going to call them the Brood for a second there. I mean, overall, this was a great story. Like, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a lot more entertaining than it has any right to be, I feel.
Yeah. When I read this earlier today, before we recorded this, trades are usually 5 issues, sometimes 6, depending on if there's an issue 0 or depending on how the storyline runs through. But most of the time, trades are like issue 1 to 5 or issue 0 to 5 kind of a thing. And most of the time, I'm spending almost all day reading a trade kind of a thing, whereas this, I think I read this in like under an hour. Because the writing from Pat Shand is so fluid that the story moves so well. And as we already said, most of this story is told in Brittany's monologue and other monologues as well. So
I would say like Pat's writing is for the most part fairly solid. The only actual complaint, nitpick that I have is I appreciate like the inner monologue of Brittany, and it isn't. It's more, what a real person might be thinking in a situation like this.
Right.
It gives a greater insight, an actual insight into her personality, and that it's not just, I've got to get the codes away from the Joker, else he'll arm the bomb. That
Right.
sort of thing. Like, you don't get that a lot, or at least that well constructed. But also, that's kind of a detriment, because there's almost too much inner monologue and not enough. We don't need a shit ton, pardon my French, of expository dialogue, but we could have used a bit more. Because, like I said, the art tells the story more than the dialogue, and that doesn't work like the whole way through. Like, there has to have that balance.
Right.
But overall, I really enjoyed the story. If you had just come into having never read Zenescope comics before, not really have any sort of understanding or grounding in this world, this probably isn't the best introduction, but it's not the worst either. I think you come away with a lot of questions, but you get more information out of it than any of the other trades, I would guess.
I think for Brittany's character, because the one shot that we talked about back in episode 310 of the podcast, the one shot for Brittany in that is it's just that. It's a one shot. It's a single story kind of thing.
All of this.
Yeah, kind of a thing. And this is a good, I would say, jumping on point. I'd have to go back and look and see. Yeah, I'm sure there is things before this. I don't know if Red had her own series like Robin did at the time or whatever. I'm not sure. I'd have to do more research on that. But, I mean, just as sort of a single 5-issue thing, because to my knowledge, this was only a 5-issue miniseries. This was not a full ongoing kind of a thing. As a 5-issue story, I think it was done very well. I mean, you're right. In certain points, there could be more dialogue, could be more, actual discussion, kind of thing, wordplay back and forth between people. But I think there was enough. And I just love the inner monologue that she does, because I got used to that when I was reading Pat's Robin Hood stuff. So I'm like, oh, cool. He's doing that here too with Brittany. He's using the inner monologue, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
On a scale of 0 to 5, what would you give this?
I'm going to give it a 3.
I'll give it a 4.
It's borderline. It's not borderline bad or borderline offensive. It's just, it could be a bit better. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it's not the worst story, but it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
And I can't really complain other than that. It's a little confusing, a little not convoluted, but just a little unclear, some of these things. But other than that, it's an entertaining story. The art more or less holds up. Like I said, it's not spotty. It's just they kind of lean on the art more than they should in telling the story. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I would recommend this if you want to check some of this stuff out. This would probably be in my list of recommendations.
Very cool.
Although if you want to get into Red Riding Hood, I'd probably say go with that one shot first. That's an easier pill to swallow.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4. I absolutely loved it. There are little bits and pieces of the art that I didn't like overall, but other than that, I love the way the story was written. I love the way that most of the art is done. It's not great. It's not bad. It's, like, for you, 3 is kind of like a middle ground for us on our rating scale. So for me, it's just slightly better than middle ground. And I did enjoy reading the story. If I can read a full trade paperback at 140 pages or whatever it is under an hour, then I must have enjoyed reading the story. Where can the people find you online, sir?
Well, they can find me whenever the hell we get around to recording it on the Comic Connoisseurs podcast with Ben the Host Carver and Red Ink. And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, @JT from Saskatoon.
Awesome. I'm at TFG on Mike. You can follow at The Pullbag, at Geekcast Radio on Twitter. Go to The Pullbag over on Facebook and Geekcast Radio Network over on Facebook. Coming up next week, JT will be back as we talk about Zenescope Entertainment's Red Agent. Now, this is taking place much later than when Code Red. This is basically the way that I was told this book is it's Mission Impossible meets something. I forget what the writer had told me on Twitter about it, but I had mentioned when we were back doing the Zenescope 10th anniversary episode, I had mentioned that I had started reading this, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of like Mission Impossible meets insert whatever here kind of a thing. So that's coming up next here on The Pullbag. JT will be back for me with that. Make your great escape in the comics, and we will catch you next time here inside The Pullbag.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullbag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepullbag and at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.